Well, hey guys, on this channel I talk a lot about different skincare ingredients and skincare products. I give you my opinion on them, I tell you how they might work, how they may not work. I also go into detail about a lot of different skin diseases, skin conditions. We talk about the medications used to treat them. But in today's video, we're actually going to shift gears and focus our attention instead on how the skin itself actually works. A lot of mainstream media marketing around skincare products, cosmetics as a whole, or the cosmetic industry kind of starts to make people just view skin as this cosmetic entity, but in reality, it is a very functional organ system. It has a lot of unique roles and purposes. It's vital to your existence. Just 1 square inch of skin, you can find about 19 million cells. It constitutes roughly 10 to 15% of your total body weight. From here on out, whenever you think about skin, I really want you to start thinking about it as more than just this sheet that you're looking at with your eye. Instead, think about it as 2 main compartments. The top compartment is the epidermis. The epidermis is really what is there keeping you protected from the outside world. You know, it keeps moisture in the body and it also keeps stuff out. Things like bacteria, fungi, viruses. It keeps irritating substances, allergens out of your skin. The epidermis is also really important for dealing with trauma to the skin. Within the epidermis are 2 main players. Keratinocytes. These are cells that make up the bulk of the epidermis, and you also have melanocytes. These are cells that make pigment. Within these cells, there's DNA, and that DNA can get damaged by ultraviolet radiation from the sun. And throughout your lifetime, accumulation of this damage can set you up for skin cancers that arise in either of these types of cells, whether it be keratinocytes. You can develop squamous cell carcinoma or basal cell carcinoma, or within the melanocytes. And that can lead to the deadly skin cancer, melanoma. Because your epidermis is constantly being challenged by different exposures, doing its job, throughout your lifetime, it must constantly be on the cycle of renewal to put out new healthy skin to the top layer. And we're going to get into how that works, how different factors play a role in that later on in this video. Below the epidermis, you have this second compartment known as the dermis. In the dermis, you're going to find the sweat gland. The sweat gland is this coiled structure that makes, well, sweat, and that sweat flows out up to the top, to the epidermis, to the surface of the skin, where it then evaporates, and the sole purpose of that is to cool the body. In the dermis, you're also going to find hair follicles, aka your pores, and a hair can grow out of that follicle and appear at the skin surface, but its growth starts down in the dermis. Attached to the hair follicle, you also have something called a sebaceous gland, which you can see in the dermis. The sebaceous gland makes sebum, aka oil, which also flows out to the skin surface and is deposited on the top of the skin. Down in the dermis, you have a cell type known as the fibroblast. Fibroblasts make collagen, they make elastin, and it's a collagen and elastin that provide the structural support mechanisms for your skin, allowing it to properly deform and stretch with day-to-day movement. Now, with exposure to environmental stressors, namely ultraviolet radiation from the sun, specifically the UVA rays, they can penetrate down to the level of the dermis. They can damage that cell population, the fibroblasts, so that they don't make healthy collagen. They make kind of abnormal collagen. These UVA rays can also destroy the collagen, contributing to the formation of wrinkles. In the dermis, you also have nerve endings that release things that can lead to symptoms of itch, stinging, burning, and you have blood vessels. And the blood vessels can contract in an effort to move the blood out of the skin, helping to keep your core body temperature lower. This is especially noticeable at the extremities. If you get very cold, you notice that your fingers and your toes are cold first. That is in an effort to keep your core body temperature warm. On the opposite end of that, if you get too warm, those blood vessels dilate to dissipate heat to the skin surface. That's why you might notice that you appear blushed, flushed. Blood vessels bring in growth factors and nutrients to the skin, to the follicle, which again is tasked with growing hair. And blood vessels also take away stuff. Another structure that you can find in the dermis, the lymphatic vessel. The lymphatic vessels take away the damaged debris and get rid of it out of the skin. Those are the 2 main compartments of the skin. Below the dermis, you have another compartment known as the hypodermis or subcutis. Most people don't really think about this in terms of it being a part of skin per se, but rather it is simply the underlying fat, the subcutaneous fat, which is there to provide volume as well as to keep the body warm and protect the underlying organs. The subcutaneous fat is affixed to the underlying muscles and bone. So now that you have some sense of the two main compartments of the skin, let's focus our efforts on understanding the epidermis. The epidermis must renew constantly throughout your lifetime in order to maintain homeostasis, aka balance. Achieving a level of balance in the epidermis requires a balance between the keratinocytes dividing and growing in number. An increasing number of keratinocytes, that is known as keratinocyte proliferation. That has to be balanced with something else the keratinocytes have to do, and that is differentiation. What the heck is differentiation? Differentiation is a process by which a cell achieves certain features, matures, if you will, characteristics that influence its final form and function. Down in the deeper layers of the epidermis, you have a population of keratinocytes that are stuck on to a membrane known as the basement membrane. These are called the basal keratinocytes, and they proliferate, they increase in number, but that has to be balanced with them saying, okay, I'm ready to get out of here and go up top. I need to acquire some properties, so I am going to commit to differentiating. It's going from I'm down here and I want to ascend up to the top ranks to be a mature differentiated keratinocyte. So once those cells decide they're going to do that, they enter into a differentiation path, and they go through different levels of the epidermis, acquiring different properties. And they start ascending up through the epidermis. First, you have them in the spinous layer, which is called the spinous layer because if you look at it under the microscope, the cells have a spiny appearance. And then they go up to something called the stratum granulosum, because if you look at that layer under the microscope, there are a lot of little granules going on. And then finally, they actually completely get rid of the nucleus. The nucleus is where the DNA is, and so the nucleus of the keratinocytes, they actually just lose that, and they become literally a shell, and that is known as a corneocyte. It's not even a living cell anymore, it's just a little shell. But that outer shell, as part of that whole differentiation process, is actually very complex. It's enmeshed in this very unique lipid structure that it ultimately helps to create that waterproof seal to things getting in. Once these cells differentiate all the way up to the stratum corneum and become differentiated corneocytes, having lost their nucleus, they're constantly being shed. Your skin actually sheds roughly 30,000 corneocytes a minute. You're constantly shedding corneocytes. So you may wonder, how is this balance maintained? How do you not run out of skin? The reason you don't run out of skin, and the reason that you can continuously throughout your entire lifetime create new healthy skin cells that allow for repairing damage and refreshing and renewing the epidermis, the reason you can do that is thanks to a type of cell called a stem cell. Keratinocyte stem cells really are what maintain homeostasis of the epidermis. They are what maintain the balance. Stem cells have a unique property where they can constantly self-renew themselves. They can just keep regenerating themselves. It's not until they commit to being differentiated that they can't go back and constantly renew. But having populations of stem cells in the skin is really what allows it to constantly be renewing and repairing damage, healing from injury. Where do these keratinocyte stem cells reside? They reside in 3 different compartments in the skin. They reside in the basal layer, so the bottommost layer of the epidermis where you have all those basal keratinocytes down there stuck to the basement membrane. You also have keratinocyte stem cells within a specific part of the hair follicle, known as the bulge region. And third, you have keratinocyte stem cells within the sebaceous oil gland. So the oil gland and the hair follicle, the bulge region, those stem cells are down in the dermis, whereas the basal stem cells are in the epidermis. These 3 compartments of stem cells can regenerate cells in either the epidermis, the sebaceous gland, or the follicle. So that's a little bit about skin structure, how it works, the different compartments. Now that you have some basic understanding of skin anatomy, skin structure, and really how the skin works just on kind of a day-to-day basis, you can kind of start to see through some misleading marketing and misleading claims that a lot of people online might make about certain medications, certain skincare products. For example, a common myth that I hear repeated over and over again is that using a topical retinoid will age your skin because it speeds up skin cell turnover. But that is not possible. Things that speed up skin cell turnover are not going to prematurely age your skin because you have stem cells, which have the ability to self-renew, and they are responsible for regenerating the epidermis. The other thing that I hear repeated a fair amount across the board is that everyone needs to exfoliate. Everyone needs to exfoliate. But exfoliating is the very heart and essence of what the epidermis is tasked to do as part of maintaining skin health. And that process of taking a skin cell from the basal layer and all the way up to the top, it takes roughly 30 days to regenerate your skin. Now, as you get up there in years, that process is a lot slower. It slows with age. And for this reason, some people with more mature skin may find that their skin is dry and dull appearing, and they benefit from incorporating a skincare product that is an exfoliant, whether that be a alpha hydroxy acid or urea. They find a lot of benefit in not only smoothing out the skin surface, but improving the look and health of the skin, improving skin radiance. Likewise, there are certain underlying skin conditions, many of which we have covered on this channel, where that process of differentiation is slowed, delayed, and you get a buildup of dry skin. These include things like keratosis pilaris, a dry skin condition where you have a buildup of stuck together dry skin cells around the follicle, actually around the pore, and that's why you get those little rough bumps on the cheeks, the upper arms, the thighs. But not everyone must incorporate an exfoliant. Again, remind yourself that just walking around, you're shedding roughly 30,000 cells a minute. 30,000 of those corneocytes are sloughing off all the time. When you get in the shower and the water is beating over your skin, it's kicking off corneocytes. When you brush up against something, when you get dressed, it's kicking off corneocytes. Another myth that I frequently hear: skin is a sponge, and that anything you put on it is going to just be soaked up and absorbed into the body. If that is the case, then there is seriously something wrong with your skin, because one of its main functions is to keep you protected from the outside world and to form a watertight seal. Of course, there are ingredients, active components, medications that have the ability to penetrate this watertight seal, but it's not the majority of things that come in contact with your skin. If this were the case, if the skin were truly a sponge, well, then it would constantly be absorbing bacteria, infectious microorganisms from our environment, and we would all be dropping down flat on our face of septic shock, which is, something that happens when you get like bacteria in your bloodstream. Your skin keeps that from happening. And there are situations, life-threatening, where your skin as an organ system fails and no longer has the ability to do that. It can happen as a side effect of certain medications. It can happen as a manifestation of certain underlying cancers. I mean, there are a lot of skin conditions where there are a lot of situations where this can happen, and it's life-threatening, because not only is the skin now going to allow for infectious stuff to get in and irritating things to get in, but it's also not going to be a very good waterproof seal to keeping water in the skin and moisture and electrolytes. So those patients, when their skin barrier as an organ system fails, they are very susceptible to dehydration, electrolyte abnormalities. For example, if somebody sustains a thermal burn to a large surface area, that's life-threatening, because the individual loses the ability to regulate body temperature, to hold on to fluid and electrolytes, and is at risk for infections. All right, y'all, I hope this video on skin anatomy, 101 was helpful. Obviously, we did not cover every single little detail about the skin. Lots Lots of cell types were left out, lots of functions, properties were left out, but hopefully this video provided you with a little bit better understanding of how the skin works so that you're not just thinking of it as this decoration, and importantly, you're thinking about it more in terms of a functional organ. Like I alluded to at the beginning of this video, I really think that the skincare, beauty industry as a whole really has manipulated our brain into this false belief that the purpose of skin and caring for skin is merely cosmetic and merely vanity. But the truth of the matter is that caring for your skin is caring for an organ system. You will find lots of lifestyle recommendations from every medical specialty out there about how to keep their respective organ system healthy long term. From the neurologist, they may tell you it's a good idea, especially in your older years, to make sure you are reading, keeping your mind active. That may help in slowing down onset of dementia. You might hear from the bone doctors, the endocrinologist, hey, doing weight-bearing exercises, especially for women as they go through menopause and beyond, is very important for bone health. Make sure you're getting good calcium and vitamin D in your diet. They may tell you that. A gastroenterologist may tell you about the benefits of including fiber in your diet for good gut health, good, the gut microbiome. Nobody bats an eye at those recommendations as merely vanity metrics because they are there to promote the health of those organ systems. So we shouldn't view skin care as a vanity metric because skin is a large organ. The reason these specialties recommend certain lifestyle behaviors is really to not, prevent aging of their respective organ system, but to slow down or prevent accelerated, extreme wear and tear on that organ system. We should view skin much in the same way. Age-related thinning of the skin is to be expected, but you don't want to do certain things to accelerate the rate at which that occurs or make it occur more severely than necessary. So a lot of tips surrounding things like sun protection and making sure that you are not doing things like smoking. They're there to help keep your skin healthy and the integrity there maintained at its best for as long as possible. Speaking of which, on the end slate, I'm going to link my video all about reversing skin thinning. Check that one out so you can learn about what can happen when your skin gets thin with age and how too much skin thinning can cause problems. So check that one out next if you missed it. But if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and as always, don't forget, sunscreen and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.